right, so we will go ahead and kick it off. We are on item 10. Go for it. Yeah.
Thank you for letting us come and present our update. Quickly, I wanted to introduce the team. Got a couple of people remotely. Myself, Todd Renier, project manager with Trainer. Zach Cornice, project architect with Trainer. Kellen Horner, who's on the call. He's our MEP engineer with Henderson Engineers, and John Hodgson, as you know, project acoustic engineer with Avant, assisting us. So today, this is more of an update for us to share with you kind of where we're at. This is our first attempt at putting the presentations that we've done today in a document format. So this is construction documents. So this is our first attempt. So it's simplified. There's not any pretty pictures. It's more of, hey, well, this is what's going to be in the document for the bidding process. This scoping document we would consider to be somewhere between an SD and a DD range. So we don't have any specs yet. We have started talking products. But however, this is more of the layout, the drawings, reflective ceiling plans, elevations. We do include Henderson drawings, some, again, basic drawings, and then we've got some of Avant's drawings in there too. So if it's okay just to start, we can start the presentation, and Zach's going to lead us through the document.
So I'm going to send the request to share. I don't know if you guys got that. Yep. All right. All right, so to kick it off, here we have, whoops.
Zach, are you able to email that to us so we can distribute it to members?
Absolutely,
Look
yeah.
individually on their screens.
We made some changes right before the meeting, so
Yep.
stuff we just.
One of you could email that to me, I'll get that sent out to the committee.
Sure. Yep, so we'll just do a typical kind of page turn thing. So we'll work through their document, going page by page. But it should be a pretty familiar site for construction documents. They're pretty typical in how they're arranged and how this is going to be organized. But first thing to point out here, we have our table of contents, and we can see that we have 3 sections included in this package. So we have section 1, the major maintenance, section 2, broadcast studio, section 3, which is sound absorption, or the architectural acoustics. So if you remember from our previous meeting, the workshop, we had gone through each of these and talked through how each one is related to a different bucket of money, if you will, a different funding source. So we carried that forward and divided our sections based on that. So we'll see a couple pages like this. This is going to be some of our general stuff, abbreviations, symbols, keys like that are built into our typical set. But here, the first page that can give us a little bit of information. This is section 1 again, so the major maintenance items. And what you see here is the crosshatch showing all of the parts of the building that are not in the scope, where the solid white areas are the rooms that are part of this work scope. So we'll be going through each of these in this section and an enlarged plan and RCP and interior elevation. And if at any point you need me to stop and zoom in on anything, please interrupt. Don't mind. But here, the major maintenance items that have some architectural features that we need to consider and include in our drawings. We have starting from the garden level, working our way up. We have WG11, which is the IT workroom, then W105, the auditor's suite, and W107 just across the chase is W107, a shared conference room, then W205, the Senate break room. So each of these is a mechanical grill that is being relocated to extend the branch. And Kellen can give more information on that if necessary, but we'll see how he's drawn it up on their set here.
Basically the architectural set is always first, then it goes MEP and then acoustics. It's how we're setting up each section. And so if any work affects the architectural features, decorative paint, plaster, trim, we will show it first. So we'll have a demolition and then a layout.
And this will be the new layout, showing where the new grill would be to extend that branch. Then the mechanical sheets. Similar scoping diagram. And then here, maybe one of the first things to touch on is the mock-up for the fan coil unit, the design for how to reduce the noise coming from those units. So one thing we have pointed out here is that we are recommending that there is a pre and post test for this mock-up unit. The pre-test would establish the baseline and the post test would give us a benchmark to work towards throughout the rest of the repairs. So Kellen, I don't know if you want to explain anything here, but it's along the lines of what we've shown in the past. Simple
Yeah. Oh, yep, I can chime in here. So basically what we're seeing here is the darker lines are the modifications that we're going to be doing to the fan coil unit itself. So I know previously there were some concerns with the baffle system on the intake kind of sticking off the front and being kind of a tripping hazard, as well as the aesthetic impact to the space. So we have revised that to mount on the inside of the removable panel. So that panel will remove, it won't impede filter access or anything. So the other thing I just want to clarify is you're seeing a lot of kind of diagonal lines. So what that's indicating is areas that we're going to be adding acoustic duct liner to try and mitigate some of this noise that we're dealing with these fan coils. So on the bottom side, that's where we're having our return, adding a baffle there, and then on the top we are lining the perimeter of the supply discharge, as well as providing some baffles kind of spaced every foot or so to try and prevent noise that comes out of the unit. So the other thing to keep in mind is we're not just doing the liner modifications as well. There's a few general notes there at the bottom, general notes 1 and 2, that talk about control modifications. So we're going to look at adding a temperature deadband. The point of this is to, not run the unit excessively. And then we're also going to look at running the units in parallel running the units in parallel to basically make sure we're not just staging those or turning those on at like full speed. So yeah.
Madam Chair, just real quick, an update with this too is we're going to mock this up. And we've been working through how we're gonna procedurally do that. So we're gonna find an office or space that we're gonna identify. And we're gonna go in and actually do some, I guess accelerated would be a good word, or some more specific testing of that unit prior to us doing this. We're also gonna bring in a third-party contractor to go ahead and do this, because I think they're gonna be able to respond a little bit better than GSD is on the spot and get it taken care of. And then once we do this configuration and this fix, we'll then again test that system to see how much we increased and how much better that system's gonna turn out. And then that way we can bring that back to the committee and decide its value. And I think it'll be a great value, but that way you'll have a before and an after that you'll really be able to compare and look at this system. So we're currently working through that right now and looking at the best method to go about getting that third-party contractor to come in and get that done. And they're working on the testing that we'll do before and the after testing that then we can bring back to you guys.
So, Madam Chairman, 2 questions, Brandon, for you or gentlemen. Once that testing is done, is it your thought that most of these registers, we will need to do this? Or is this a case of us looking, well, there's a couple of these that we can just let go along the way they are now? I mean, what's your thoughts? Is that gonna be every one of these throughout the building, or just some of them?
So Madam Chair, Senator, we have in this project identified some high profile spaces that we want to deal with throughout this project. Once we have this fix in place, we'll be able to go back, GSD will have a system in place of how to do it. And then we can start picking those with major maintenance. And whether that's the whole building or specific ones, we'll kind of have to evaluate that with GSD as we go through that. But as part of this project, what you've seen a couple sheets ago of those defined rooms, those spaces we want to deal with this project.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I would add though, and you might recall when you guys set the scope for this project, it was really not known at the time whether or not trainer has gotten down in Henderson dialed down to the issue that is eligible for major maintenance that really is just these mechanical areas. When we identified them, it's really every single room in the building that has fan coil units in it. But what we identified were the ones that were either A, unbearable, or B, so high profile that we needed to address something. But I don't think you would find an occupant in the building who doesn't find them to be excessively loud.
Thank you for that. So the second part of the question, Madam Chairman, is what time frame are we looking at? Specifically just for these registers or?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Senator, we've kind of just started jumping into it. I've got to go back to my office and figure out the best way. There's two methods that we could do it. We kind of figured that this initial fix will be $1,000-$2,000. And whether that CMD contracts that directly through us or we tack it on to trainer's contract and have them do it. But I think with it being a low value, we just need to decipher which way. And we have a couple of contractors in mind that we'll reach out to come in and do this work that have done some acoustic work with these units in the past to come in and apply this fix. And when we talked, it was a day, maybe 2 days total to get in and kind of do this and fine tune it and make sure it's where it needs to be. So we're hoping after the first of the year that we can get in. That's going to be a little tricky with everyone coming back after the first of the year, but we'll find a space that we can do this test.
Well, that's great news. I mean, that was my hope, is that we could at least target some of those high profile places that Wendy alluded to.
Mhm.
And knock those out if it's not a huge amount of time and you don't want a room torn up for very long over the next 3 months, but yeah.
Yeah, this will be a couple day process and hopefully once we get this figured out and everything else with GSD, hopefully it's a half day process once it gets refined and they get good at it and used to it. And I'm sure they'll run into additional things as they're going through, but I think this fix overall will be able to apply across the building.
Ellen, did you have anything else? Good.
No, I think you guys covered it all.
John, did you have anything to add to that or are you good?
No, I'm good. I mean, we'll continue to kind of revise this design a little bit as we move forward to make sure it's, as good as it can be and adequate for reducing the noise.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go to our section 2, which is the broadcast studio. So here you can see 2 different wall types that we have proposed added to this space, and we'll see what those look like in plan here in the following sheets. First thing to know is our demo. So you know the current space, it is a shelled space just down the hallway. There's a media workroom that is currently being used by the media teams. But it will not be in our scope. We won't be touching it, but there are a few workrooms within that space that will have some small acoustic treatment on the walls. And then the larger space is that studio, which we're proposing to enlarge by demoing the walls just to the southwest, which would be the wall dividing the tech room and then a larger workroom as part of that media workroom. So the broadcast studio would then expand to take up that space with those new walls. So you can see there is a furring wall type that is proposed along the hallway wall to the north, plan north here, and then to the plan east, which is where the elevator is, and it's causing excess noise. So this wall would be a double chipboard wall with insulation on the inside, spaced off of the existing wall to give it a gap so that the sound does not transfer through as it does currently. Furthermore, inside of the space, we have planned out a location for a backdrop and a pipe grid at the ceiling, in addition to all the acoustic treatment that this room would receive to reach the reverberation calculation that Avant has recommended. Now, within this space, though, these are some of the questions that remain. There are the cyclorama and the pipe grid, which are essential for broadcasting work, and which we have shown conceptually, but that still needs to be decided and detailed more thoroughly as we move forward.
Kind of question. If I remember right, that space has got some exposed mechanical. Is this still gonna be accessible for our folks to go do maintenance?
Yeah, the intent is to raise everything as high as we can
Yeah.
and then put a hard lid ceiling with access panels everywhere.
Okay.
And that will help treat that separation, plus it'll get it out of the way. But yeah, the intent is to have everything accessible, so Henderson will work with us wherever there's a valve, wherever there's a junction box, we'll need access.
Perfect. And it might be good if we can keep our trades folks in the loop, just in case there's particular work that they do on any of those.
Okay.
That maybe they need access to be a little wider or a little bit, if there's any. I don't know that there would be, but I know that sometimes comes up
Right.
different things.
Yeah, so here, the elevations, you can see those acoustic treatment on the wall. Primarily, it's on the ceiling with a few additional ones on the wall to hit that square footage we need of absorption. But that's just about it in the space. 2 new doors, acoustic doors to block the sound from coming in or leaving the room.
Madam Chair. I know that in the past there had been some desire and there had been talk about putting a window to the hallway. And I don't know if that's something so that people walking by could see the inner workings. I think at the same time too, that might cause a little bit distraction. I think it's really cool and that would be great to see what's going on. I mean, you walk through some of our colleges here in the state and they have the radio station with the DJ set up with the window and it's kind of a fun thing. I don't know, and would look to the committee if that's something, a desire of the committee to do that. Whether that needs to be a little more private or a little more public, to people.
Do we envision this as more of a TV broadcasting space or a
Absolutely.
radio? Or more TV than?
TV, absolutely.
Madam Chair, this did come out of the work of the oversight group where there was a desire for kids as they're coming into this space to kind of see all different types of work that occur in this building. We have partnered with PBS and we'll want to pull them back in. They're kind of our, where we've gathered requirements for this space in the past. And they said they are absolutely open to it. They're used to it. They did say that, if there was glass, it might be something that they'd want to have the type where they can black it out from their end and, so that they would have that flexibility, but that a lot of studios do operate in that type of environment, but just the ability to maybe set it up both ways would be helpful.
I'm an old radio guy. I like it. I like the idea. Especially for students coming by to be able to do some of the media work going on. But I'm glad that you're careful to involve. Thank you for that, Wendy. we want to make sure to involve those people and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think it'd be terrific.
Yeah, I think the ability to have it not have it be flexible is key.
Yeah, I think that's very important. You have to be able to black that out, but
Madam Chair, just I have one more thing before we hop onto here. Another thing, and Andrew, this is probably something we'll want with trades and everything else, is we do have a server. I don't know if you can kind of point your cursor where that existing server is within that room that generates quite a bit of heat that I'm not sure in the initial design that it was thought through. So as part of this project, we want to kind of tackle that issue to preserve and take care of that. There's a couple of different methods, and as we work through this, I think we'll come up with a good solution for that room to keep it cool year round, that we won't have a problem in the future, because that's a pretty high end, if I'm correct. There's fiber going straight into it, XYZ, that is a pretty important server for the Capitol.
probably can't just run a dryer vent out to the.
Good.
And Madam Chair and Mr. Chairman, it does make sense in this scope of work because likely there'll be additional load that needs to be supported in there as a result of the technology in the broadcast studio.
Helen, was there anything else you want to talk about in detail, kind of what you're doing?
The only thing I would point out too is I know previously there was a lot of concerns with the noise from the plumbing piping. So there are plans to wrap that with acoustical lagging material to try and prevent noise coming into the space.
Yep. Then now section 3, the sound absorption, unless Wendy, sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't realize that you were moving on from broadcast studio. There'll also be some fit and finish included in here, so equipment and some furnishings, the ability to do different types of, if you want to have a sit-down interview versus a news desk, that was always contemplated as part of the scope of this finishing the broadcast studio.
Thanks for that reminder, Wendy. That makes all the sense. We've got to be able to stage that area for sure.
Proceed. Section 3, sound absorption, the architectural acoustics. So this is where we're looking at the public meeting rooms on the first floor, the ceremonial conference room, executive conference room, and the formal office within the governor's suite. And then the policy group conference room in the garden level. Then on level 2, this is where we're getting chambers. So we'll have the chamber itself and then the lobby entering from level 2 on each one, House and Senate. And then on level 3, the JAC committee room, in addition to the gallery spaces and these chambers. So the first one we'll touch on is the Senate room. So this presents our first ad alternate, which is a decision that we have proposed before, that we either look at installing a acoustic drapery at the openings to the gallery, or we extend our ceiling treatment into that space. So far, we have presented this as a cost savings. The acoustic drapery being far cheaper than the ceiling, and it achieves a lot of the same effect that the ceiling does. But we will like to mention that the ceiling will be less invasive visually than the drapery would. Drapery would be something that you notice immediately. I don't know if you remember from the renderings we had shown before, you can see that from no matter where you're standing in the Senate, it may blend into the surrounding architecture. That would be the intent to do so, but the ceiling would be the far least invasive visually. However, we've carried that through as an ad alternate to propose an added cost to installing that ceiling treatment. And will remain to do, and we'll keep that in the set as long as that's still being considered by the subcommittee. Sure. And so with all of these RCPs, the reflected ceiling plans, these being the demo version of them, we're looking at all of the elements on the ceiling. So that is going to be your fire sprinklers, your lights, your speakers, and then your fire alarms. So each one of these, where we're looking at proposing the ceiling treatment, would have to be removed, salvaged, and then reinstalled once that ceiling treatment is added. Those would have an extinction as designed by Henderson. And then the speaker system would be a new layout recommended by Avant to further make that a better space acoustically.
So appreciate all of that. Gentlemen, that gives us a lot to think about. No. The ceiling treatment makes a lot of sense to me, but I realize it's more expensive. I don't know. Eddie, what do you think?
The only senator in here.
We did start with the most important area.
Did we just learn that was the house of the Lord?
Yeah, with the burgundy.
Yeah.
So
That's because everybody says, oh, Lord. I think. So the curtains, as you show there, they don't close off the opening entirely, right?
let me show you the elevation, may give you a little bit more insight, and then I have the rendering pulled up that we had shown at a previous workshop.
Right.
But they are just above the column impost where that arch begins, that spring line. And then this is what the rendering had looked like we had presented before.
Madam Chair, one thing to consider as we're going through this is that we've looked at both these options before, and we're going to carry both options through design to 100% to bidding. And as he said, we'll bid that alternate. And once we have that, then we'll be able to bring that back once we have that bid and decide what our appetite is, and how important it is at that time. And maybe we don't want to do anything. Maybe the curtains are too invasive, but the ceiling's too high, but that's a decision we'll have to make. So currently, right now, both things are in their scope. They're gonna carry both through design, and then once we get pricing from contractors, we'll.
Thank you, Brandon. That makes a lot of sense. It really does. I think that helps a lot. Appreciate that we're looking at every angle. Yep. Good.
Yep, and then the house does not have that issue. This one doesn't have a opportunity for those acoustic drapery. So the acoustic ceiling treatment in this would go throughout the gallery. And like I said before, each of these ceiling elements would have to be extended down to accommodate the added ceiling treatment. Then these smaller rooms, these are all throughout the building we had covered in those overall plans. So here we'll begin in the bottom right with the JAC. Here, there is nothing being removed or reinstalled from the ceiling. The ceiling with its decorative paint would be protected throughout the project. The only thing here we are proposing is the addition of speakers overhead, which Avant has recommended and shown. And they also show this in more detail on their sheets. So we may talk about that in more detail once we get to them. So here I'll continue going to the ceremonial conference room. And throughout all of these are gonna be many of the same things, removing, salvaging, and reinstalling the ceiling elements for the added ceiling treatment. And each one of these would have a similar ceiling treatment, being that pyrotechnic material we discussed before being added in with an offset from those coffers within that space that's allowed. Doing our best to avoid anything on the ceiling, and where we can, just allowing it to be extended down. And finally, the public meeting rooms, again, same treatment. Those ceiling elements removed, salvaged, reinstalled, as well as the House chamber and Senate chamber lobbies. In the Senate and House chamber, we also have the glass railings, which we have talked about before, removing those and replacing them with the brass or bronze railings that have been used elsewhere in the Capitol building and continue to be used by Dimensional Innovations in their Wayfinding project. So that would be the Julius Bloom bronze railings. We would be able to match what's there, and replace this glass, which has been it's a reflective material that does not help acoustically, and it would allow more sound to reach the audience with its removal. And one place that we have talked about before, and I know there has been a lot of discussion about, but that's the behind the bar area where we have looked at removing that glass. I'm not sure if there's any more discussion to be had on that. We have continued to show that in our documents, and we'll continue to recommend that that happen along with the rest of the glass railing, but just wanted to bring that to your attention now. So continue on then. The House chamber, similar treatment, that glass railing being removed for the new bronze railing to be installed. And the behind the bar area as well, glass railing. Now, the new ceiling treatment, which I had already mentioned, is just installed on the ceiling, offset from the coffer beams and crown molding. Throughout the building, that remains the same approach in each of these rooms. While the crown molding may have different profiles, we'll be sure to appropriately install these ceiling treatments based on the dimensions that are present. And then the JAC has wall treatment being added as opposed to the ceiling, with the decorative ceiling being in that room. So this wall treatment would be similar to the other wall treatment that provides the absorption for that space to lower the reverberation. And you can see in these elevations where we have proposed those to be installed. With very, very minimal existing elements to be removed and relocated or reinstalled in place. And with that, that concludes the architectural portion of that. Anything else would be in Henderson's drawings, which is just the extinctions and modifications need to be done to all those wall and ceiling elements.
Madam Chair, can you remind me, was there in JAC where the mural is located, was there something that was going to be installed behind that?
No,
That was not included, so it's just on the, behind the dais and the sidewalls?
yep,
Oh,
the
thanks.
east, south, and west elevations.
Ellen, I don't know if you've got anything else. For this piece, this section is basically just adapting to the increased thickness and relocation. Some of the cameras, we may actually relocate out a little bit where they're tucked in the corner. They're gonna be interfering with the plaster profile, but those are some of the things we're looking at while we're here the next couple of days is exactly where we need to start and stop the treatment and what gets modified.
And that includes the gallery areas where people are sitting up.
Yes.
There and all of that, yeah. That's something that I think will really be helpful to figure out how to get some sound up there.
John,
Or we're misconstrued all the time.
we will try to help fix it.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
John or Kellen, I don't know if you guys got anything to add on this piece. A lot of this has been proofed out before and talked about, and John, your reports, and we're just gonna continue to keep adding the details and work through everything, so.
No, that wraps up our scoping set.
Our next document is a 50% review, so that's when we're gonna start, you'll start seeing details, you'll see profiles. We'll start introducing some of the decorative paint components that we've talked about in the past. We'll have specifications. We will have our first cost estimate based on the construction documents at that time too, so. This one is more of kind of a confirmation of where we're at, what rooms we're impacting and how.
So, Madam Chair, I guess kind of to wrap that up a little bit, very mundane, very boring to look at. Absolutely agree 100% with what that is, but really is what we've got encapsulated within these documents and where they're at right now is all of the written stuff that we saw before is now getting put onto sheets and these construction documents of how these things are gonna go out to bid. And as they continue to start to define things more and more, I think we'll have more decision points for the committee as we move along. But it's a pretty big step to get that written document into what it is here on paper, and it'll continue to evolve and get bigger. We'll be able to start seeing some sections and some details of how these finishes are gonna actually affect those specific spaces as we move forward. And I know as they're out here on site right now, they're doing a lot of verification of what those things are and where they need to put those. So very mundane and boring, but that's kind of where we're at in the process. And I think it's more than anything is a good reminder of what we had seen previously and what we have to look forward as we're moving forward.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Brandon, but I do think subcommittee understands how important it is and how much of a benefit I think we can provide to the state capital, so. Appreciate all the work, you guys. It's important stuff.
I do think the timing is also not terrible, that we're going into a session with a lot of new folks, and so they will know how well they can hear or not. Because there's executive areas on there, but I do think this is largely gonna be a decision of the legislature, particularly in the chambers. I'm never shy to offer an opinion, but I can't say whether the curtains are, I shouldn't and will probably not have much input to that.
I think the issue is gonna be, that we just never had them.
Yeah.
They've just never been there. I haven't really been in a capital where those existed, and we'll just have to kind of walk our way through that. And appreciate, you guys providing us with all of those information points, once they're gathered, once they're bid out, and we can get a good look at, here's what we can do and what pieces of it do you want to try to get done. That's really what it's gonna boil down to, and I think I like the approach that our subcommittee has taken, which is let's get started and do it in an incremental way. See what kinds of impacts we can have. I agree with Christie. A lot of this, you know, through the legislative process, I suppose. And I do like that some of our newcomers will understand why we're tackling something like this. I reminded our appropriations committee last week that this was done 100 years ago. So,
And then if everybody new can hear perfectly, then we can scrap the whole thing, but I have a feeling
yeah,
that
there you go.
probably
If
is
they're
not.
all
gonna-
20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, some of our younger people maybe don't hear as well. They're the ones going to the concert, so. No.
What?
Yeah, he's doing it. What? You can share it.
Huh?
So, anything else?
I'd probably need to figure it out.
Mr. Chairman, Brandon will look into this more, but there had been some discussions in previous subcommittee meetings about the extension, the acoustics, the sound absorption and the extension is good, but there may be some AV tweaking that we still need to look into with a bond.
Okay, well, is that all on the business for now?
Really good. I really appreciate the work. I just think it's gonna be one of the grand additions that we can make to this Capitol Square. So thank you, gentlemen, for all your work. I'm especially excited about what it might do for those who come and visit the chambers and watch the process and try to take part in it. And those who are seated upstairs, I've gone up to visit with people before, and it really is difficult sometimes to hear what's going on. That's gonna help so much. It's gonna be a big thing, so.
This is what we consistently keep getting asked about.
Yeah.
But what about?
We do. And so thank you, and I'm excited that the little bits and pieces of it could maybe get started fairly soon. Yeah, you know, we talked about the registers, and then we'll go through the process with you guys as we move forward. Good stuff.
I think so, and I think we've gone through everything else we need to, kind of as discussed before,
Thank you, gentlemen, for your work.
Thank you.
Coming a little early and giving us a good run through. Subcommittee, anything else? Jump in there, otherwise we're near the end of it.
yeah.
Madam Chairman, I did remember one thing that's kind of fun, which is you may recall that the Wyoming Capitol was up for renewal of its National Historic Landmark status. So our SHPO office had worked with National Park Service staff, and it was just officially announced yesterday that the Secretary of Interior has signed that renewal. So the Wyoming Capitol remains a National Historic Landmark. And you may recall that Governor Gordon and at that time, President Driscoll and Speaker Summers all spoke on behalf of the project along with our state SHPO staff.
Terrific. Awesome news. Well, Madam Co-Chairman, as we come to a close on this meeting, I want to thank the subcommittee again and underscore that we couldn't do it with just the 6 members of the committee. All of our ex officios who have voted in some way, helped in many, many ways. I just want to tip my hat to all of you and thank you. We do have a little uncertainty for the next couple of months. We're not sure who will gather, but the last 2 years, I'm really proud of the work and proud of this subcommittee. I think it's done more than just work on wayfinding and historical exhibits. What I appreciate, Madam Co-Chairman, is the collective work we've done to represent two branches of government. And it's been a pleasure to serve with you, and I think we've gained some valuable ground.
Yeah, I very much hope to see you and Representative Sherwood back in the chair. But our meetings are always public if other things happen. Well, the extras. No, this has been really, you know, we talked about in JC, this committee is highly uncomfortable when you have multiple branches that have to come to a decision, but I think we have consistently done the task placed in front of us. Remember composites? And they're done. We did it. And no one else did make that decision. And we did it.
Well, the two representatives who have joined me have just done stellar work. Really appreciate Representative Sherwood. We're missing Representative Nicholas, maybe for the first time ever today, you know. It's a tough time of year, but I think I tip of the hat to the treasurer. Treasurer Meyer has been with us all along the way, and I can remember when we first got started, he was a little hesitant to get involved with this subcommittee, and I twisted his arm and begged, and you know, I'm so appreciative of all the effort he's put in. So anyway, it's been great, and see you all in the new year, and thanks for being here.
Well, with that, I'll consider us adjourned, and I'm assuming when we have, Brianna will tell us what to do when it is the time to do it. Whatever it is.
Tanner, appreciate you guys more than you know.